Mm.
Hey, we're live.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
You really adopted the dark. I was born in it.
Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Bazinga.
2 in the box. Ready to go. We be fast. They be slow.
Cool.
Hello and welcome to Mt.Geekmore, your favorite place to listen to four friends argue, debate, and discuss their top four, a Mount Rushmore, if you will, of a certain pop culture topic. Today, we are going to be talking what can make or break a TV show as it may be, and we are going to be talking about television pilots.
It's
Not
right up there.
Yeah, right up there. If you're watching us live, you can check us right up there at the top. If you are listening audio, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media at Mt.Geekmore, and you can keep track of when we will be recording different episodes and going live via Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I believe is the third one, but I'm not a big Twitch guy, so I'm not.
No, we are currently streaming on multiple platforms. We are cross promoted on every major social media situation. So
There we go. So we are talking TV pilots. As we all know, it's hard enough to get a TV show made, let alone grab everybody with the very first episode. So we're looking for those episodes that made you want to watch an entire show. And we like to start off and go around and talk about how everybody made their list. Mike, what went into your list?
Hi, I'm Mike Mercadal. I made my mountain by the first things I thought of. First thought, best thought, baby. Honestly, this is like we were kind of talking about it before the show, before we went live, about like how it's like asking like what's your favorite breakfast you've ever had? Like it's specific but super not specific. Mm-hmm. So it's like what's the favorite pilot episode of any TV show you've ever seen? It's like there's a billion of them. I don't know. And who knows how many I've seen that I've forgotten, but the ones that stuck around, the ones that were first to pop up in my mind, clearly had to be the ones that I put on the mountain because they're the ones that stand out as like the ones I remember. That was like my go-to.
And as I was reminded when Mike introduced himself, I guess I should have told everybody who was on this episode. I am hosting today. I am Daniel DeBona. That was Mike Mercadal with his list right over there.
That's right.
We've got Missy down there in the corner. Hey, Missy.
Hello.
And we've got Jeff back. He's here and there and everywhere these days. Well, good to see you, Jeff.
I'm a whore.
No, this is all free, so technically you're a slut.
Yeah. All right, so Missy, how did you make your list?
So I didn't make my list until a few hours ago, and it was one of those that I sat down going, this might be tough to put together, and now I potentially have 3 mountains that I could talk about. I think TV pilots are really interesting to me because I feel like they're as important as the series finale. And so I went for the pilots that I'll typically watch like as a standalone is an amazing episode. And the ones that stuck out to me, the ones that made my mountain are the ones that had the conflict was like immediate. There's some shows that start out and they're kind of trying to find their way in the first season, and they don't find their groove until the second. And the ones that I'm gonna talk about, I feel like they from the jump they were in it, and it hooked me from the beginning. Yeah, that's how I came up with my mountain.
All right, Jeff, how about you?
So for me, I actually was texting DeBona earlier today. I had some time over the weekend, so I was able to kind of rewatch some shows. The ones that ended up being on my mountain were the ones that immediately popped in my head. The only substitution was my number 4. I was the only one that didn't have any kind of sitcom or mentioned sitcoms. And because it was hard for me to compare a sitcom to some of these dramas and other shows, but I ended up putting in one of my favorite sitcoms, I rewatched the pilot today, and I remembered it just as funny as great as when I first saw it. One thing I will point out, just a little counteract to what Missy said. Just because it's a good pilot does not mean the show ended up good.
Yes.
So a lot of them started off incredibly strong in honorable mentions, and a lot of my honorable mentions are like that. And the show ended up shitting the bed, big time. So it's an interesting thing to see, huh?
We're gonna talk about Game of Thrones.
That's not even like the worst one I was thinking of, but yeah.
Table.
Yeah. but to me, it's the four that immediately, like what Mike said, it's the four that popped in my head. I got to rewatch them, and they still held a place in my heart, and I still remembered them.
For me, it was a little bit of what everybody's saying. For me, I had the one issue of not letting how much I like a show down the road and as a whole color what I remembered of the pilot. There are plenty of shows that end up being very, very good. The pilot is hot trash. Don't say it if it's on your list, I guess, even though I've stated my opinion. The pilot of The Office is fucking terrible. I mean, like that. I mean, everybody can agree on that. Like, it's diversity day or whatever. It's just like those first couple are just not good. But the show goes on to be great. So I had to, one, not let that color the way I looked back. But then two, I guess diversity day is second, pilots first. Anyway, so but two, I didn't necessarily let whether or not a show turns out good define whether or not it can make this mountain. I have a show on my mountain that ran for multiple seasons. I refuse to acknowledge that more than one season exists because that pilot was so good. And yes, that entire first season was incredible. It then went on to become trash. But for a season, it was very, very good. And that pilot was amazing. So it was a weird balance. The thing that I didn't think this one was going to be that hard because when I made my short list, it was an actual short list. But then getting down to 4 from that, like, it became painful. There are a couple, like there's one in particular on my honorable mentions that it is just, it's physically painful for me that it is not on my actual list, but I just don't think it stacks up to some of the others. So
really,
like it's so good. But I think that when it all comes down to it, it just doesn't stand up to what I have on some of my others that I have on my list. So, but we'll get to that when we get to honorable mentions.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, if everybody's got their lists, I suppose that we will start off with our number 4s.
Number 4. Sound effects.
Oh, that's right. We don't have the thing.
Sound effect. Movie quote.
Yes. Neri is still the keeper of the sound effects. So, Mike, what do you have for number 4?
I have, I was just looking at my list and my mind went blank. I have Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
That's right. Batman the Animated Series was from the beginning. That first episode is called On Leather Wings, and it is the movie, like the continuing Batman movies that we wanted as kids. Suddenly they were like, boom, in your face, and it was adult, and it was like good from the get-go. It didn't like baby you by leading you into like, and here's how Batman becomes Batman. It was literally like straight up, here's a Batman adventure. This is Bruce fucking Wayne. He's solving crimes. There's a giant bat, and it's going to have a cinematic orchestral score. It's going to have this insane new style of animation. And from the get, it was like, young me was transfixed, and I still go back and watch it, and I'm like, that was like, I'm fucking 40 now, and I'm still like, dope, still dope, unbeatable, still dope. And like, no matter where they went with it afterwards, that first run of like the first 60 something episodes of that Batman the Animated Series is one of the best comic book things of all time, period. Is the best. It's one of my favorite things of all time. And right from the get-go, it just did not baby you and was like, here's Batman, motherfuckers, go. And that was, as a kid, I was like, this is better than kids stuff. I knew it in the moment. It's one of the best first episodes of all time. Immediately hooked.
Dude, I did not even think about Batman the Animated Series. It's such, and it's also it's like you're right because it wasn't. They were like, look, you know who Batman is, right? They were
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we need to tell you about Batman. No, this is Batman. Let's
We're
go.
gonna have to watch what is it? Thomas and Martha
Thomas
Wayne
and
get
Martha.
blown away again. There's gonna be pearls dropping, and I think no, we don't need to see that shit again. We didn't need to see it then. It's like okay. There's a comedy group from Australia from years ago that they do music, and they're called Tripod, and they have a song where they start off like they're talking to the audience about like, oh, you guys seen the King Kong movie? King Kong movie is a little long, right? We should have thought it got going a little sooner, and then they start writing the song about it, and the song is called "Get to the Fucking Monkey." You know what I mean? Like, there's movies that would benefit from getting to the fucking monkey. Get to the monkey. We didn't pay to see Adrian Brody be brooding on an island, but like we paid here to see King. We came to see King Kong. Give us the fucking King Kong. That's what Batman the Animated Series was. It's like, yeah, here's motherfucking Batman. Go. Like that's it. You get Batman from the first frame.
I introduced Nathan to it last year during the pandemic, and he was obsessed with it. And it made my heart happy that this show that I was absolutely obsessed with, he dug. It was weird. His favorite character was Clayface, but I mean, whatever it is. Yeah.
That first Clayface episode won a fucking Emmy.
Yeah.
Did it really?
Yes. For animation, like when he's in that room with all the faces. This isn't the pilot episode, but when he's in the room with all the faces of the actor that was him.
Yeah.
When he's like trying to fuck with him and he can't control it and he's turning into all that shit, like it's still to this day holds up. It still holds up. So the animation's so good on that show. And then that first one, like the score, even there's a whole like mini documentary that came out. I got to interview Kevin Conroy one time. It was amazing. I'm so hooked. That show is incredible. That show is like a big part of my, not just my life. Like I love that show. Will always be Mount Rushmore of things.
Yeah.
100%. Like, Mike, give us your 4 favorite things. Well, on that mountain is Batman the Animated Series and other shit.
And 3 other things.
Yeah.
All right. So Batman the Animated Series. Missy, what you got for number 4?
My number 4 is we all know that I'm heavy with the sitcom, and I'm actually pretty shocked that I did 2 and 2. My number 4 is Outlander. And Outlander, I will say that it's not for the obvious reasons.
It's sexy.
It is super fucking sexy, but it's not the. It doesn't get hot in the first episode. That's like 3 or 4 episodes in, maybe 5 after the wedding.
That wasn't the first episode where she gets munched on at the Scottish memorial site.
Yes, that does happen, but in comparison to other shit,
I remember when we talked about this.
But in comparison to what happens later on,
no. Did you just say munched on?
Yeah, that's what he said. He did say that. You could have just said like that's her husband, so they're having sex.
And what's the pilot episode?
The pilot. So this is why this is why Outlander is my number 4. So I'm traditionally sitcom heavy with the comedy, and this is more of a drama. It's drawn out. And the other thing is that part of the I would say like one of the characters in the show, I feel, is the costume design, the time traveling, literally the time traveling. So the show just starts off with the lady coming back from war, her and her husband, and they're trying to reconnect. They go on vacation. She touches a magic rock that transports her 200 years before that, and just lands her in the middle of the woods. And from there, the show takes off. And so beautiful scenery. The conflict is it. And again, this is one of the ones that I watched this pilot not expecting to get into the show at all, because it's so not my niche, my thing. But the conflict was really interesting to me, just to see, like, even now you would think, if it was some kind of plot where like you're in 2021 and you get transported 100 years ago, it would be like a show that would be more relatable because you're in present time, so you understand the contrast. But this show forces you to kind of think a little bit more, like you use your imagination a little more, because you're still looking at the past, going further back. And so the other thing that I really love about this pilot is that the scenery is just so beautiful. It's
It
like
made me
breathtaking.
want to go to Scotland.
It made me want to go to Scotland, and made me want to travel like to castles and shit like that. Like it's just such a great show, and I was surprised to enjoy it as much as I did because again, it's not my niche. And then of course we meet Jamie Fraser, which he's ruined every man on the planet. So still going strong. Recommend. It's a good binge, and lots of sex, and everyone wins in that.
Okay, people talk about that show, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to stop watching that show because there was a lot of rape in that show, and I got physically uncomfortable. Like I was just like, this is a hard watch. Like I'm not supposed.
What season were you on?
I don't know. My
Season rape.
My girlfriend at the time was watching it and was like, I'd like tune back in, and I'm like, are they getting raped again? Jesus! And
because
was she watching the right show?
Yeah, I don't know.
It was because
it was like brutal. So that guy Jamie gets like brutalized throughout the whole first season. I'm sure that
because
the pilot was great for me to put up. Like maybe it's because I didn't see the pilot.
The reason why,
so the reason why attachment to stomach the rape.
Now I
don't want to go to Scotland. He gets brutalized for an independent reason, aside from the rape being a theme of that show. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it was. / maybe is a little bit to a very different degree, where it's like that's just how what it happened. Now there's a lot of stopping it, and the Randall villain he's a piece of shit, and he gets his.
And it's her husband.
The other interesting thing is that so she travels back in time, and her husband's doppelganger is just think of a Lannister and then some,
Lannister.
just a fucking piece of shit. But he wears the face of her husband, so it's super. And then there's the historical aspect of the show, which is the Scotland and England tension and all of that. So it's just, at that time, for a British woman to be accepted into an Scottish clan was not like a thing that would probably fly. So there's a lot of conflict that hooks you in from the jump. The time traveling, the hot guys, the hot sex, and just the entire plot of because in the jump of the plot, she's like, I want to run back. But as the show progresses, which I think is a great thing, the conflict becomes she's more and more at home in the past than she is in her future. So what the fuck's going to happen? So 10 out of 10 recommend. I know I've been rambling. I'm sorry, but my number 4 is Outlander.
All right. Outlander. Jeff, what you got?
All right, so number 4 is my one sitcom. May get tabled, knowing my group here, but my number 4 is Arrested Development, the pilot.
Ooh, that is a good one. It's you know what? I'm gonna lie and say it was on my honorable mentions, but I had totally forgot. That's a great pilot.
That episode, I rewatched it again today, and this is one of those shows where I haven't really watched the last 2 seasons that have recently come out, because I loved everything that I had seen up to that point, and there was the break, and sometimes it doesn't work. I may give it a shot, but this pilot, they did such a great job of balancing, introducing everybody, and doing it in such funny and interesting ways while tying in the story. That jokes from the beginning of the right at the beginning tie into a reveal at the end of the episode, and you get to see Michael's the main guy. You see him go through all these emotions of, I'm happy, I'm losing I'm going to leave my family, I'm going to become president, I'm going to do this, and then he gets his heart broken at the end of the pilot episode, but then halfway through, and then at the end he finds out that his dad did it because he loves him. So there's actually emotion behind.
Might have been some light treason.
Light treason. But you get this range of emotion that in a pilot of a sitcom. You've got this range of emotion on this guy. You've got this cast of characters that's one of the funniest ensemble casts I think that you'll have in a sitcom. It has one of my favorite lines in the series. One of the first lines Job says that it's when he's like, "Oh, this is your trick," and he's like, "This is an illusion, Michael. Tricks are what whores do for money."
Yeah.
In front of the kids, like, and I love that line. Like, I quoted that line so much. I don't know why, because it didn't really fit in situations. But
That was also one of the best written shows of all time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I adored it. It like I said, the cast was phenomenal, and everybody got their moment to shine in those in the episodes.
Mhm.
Everybody got their moment, and it's so hard in a 30-minute pilot
And
to
with
be able
such a
to
cast.
right, and everybody got their spotlight. So everybody got their spotlight. They introduced you and gave you all the base information you need to know without rushing it. It was I just thought it was beautifully done. It was amazingly done.
It's crafted. It was like constructed. Like
Yeah.
it was like perfectly structured.
Well, and the
That's
Russo brothers.
They're
Oh,
involved in a bunch of
interesting.
stuff like Community and Arrested Development.
I like when I just watched Community like a year ago, and I kept saying, I was like, are those the same Russos?
Yep.
Yeah.
The same ones.
All right.
Good for
So
them.
Arrested Development.
What about you,
all right,
DeBona?
So, God, the more I've been sitting here, as I was talking about the one that physically paid me to take it off my list. Fuck it, it's making my list. I'm calling an audible here. My number 4 is the Eastbound and Down first episode called Chapter 1.
That's an honorable mention.
I love that show.
And when I get to honorable
never
mentions,
get to
I'll
talk
tell you what I
about
pulled
the
off my
show.
list for. But the more that I've sat here and marinated with it,
Oh my
while
god.
the one that I'm replacing does more, but it's got an hour. This episode has got 30 minutes. In the first 3 minutes, perfectly illustrates the rise and fall of Kenny Powers.
Yes.
Like we see him just skyrocket up through the majors, and then we watch him crash and burn just as quickly. So you're immediately like, oh man, okay, so a lot's gonna happen here. And then as you watch this, you're just inundated by this guy who is just possibly one of the worst human beings ever. And it's so funny, and just everything about it is so hilarious. And Danny McBride is just amazing in this. And like I said, it's just you get the quick rise and fall. So then he goes back to his hometown. He immediately thinks like he's going to pick up his old girlfriend, and everybody's going to worship him. And this is all just an in-between until he gets back to the majors. And you're just watching all this, and just every time Kenny Powers opens his mouth, you're like, I hate this guy. Why can't I stop laughing?
Yeah.
You're like, this guy is awful, but while the tears are streaming down your face because it's just so funny. He ends up going back to like this crappy little bar with his buddy, and you're just constantly seeing him doing drugs while he's crashing with his brother and his family, and just being an awful role model for their children.
I don't remember that show well enough, but that's a great ensemble cast also, because as good as Danny McBride is, everyone else, it's his brother. Who's this brother?
Stevie, his friend.
No, Stevie's his friend. Yeah, that's his.
That guy is a genius.
Yes.
His name is actually Stevie Janowski or Janowski.
Yeah, he ends up being just an amazing character. But what sells this as such an incredible pilot is, and what sets the tone for the rest of the show is, there's a moment right towards the end where you start to think, okay, maybe he's going to kind of get his life together, right? And he signs up to be a substitute teacher and all this. And he says he's going to go sell his jet ski because he's finally going to get his life together. And then the final scene is him on his jet ski in like a white suit, with this chick from the bar that they'd made fun of for having herpes, topless, riding behind him. And he's just out there just tearing ass on this jet ski. And the very last thing he does is he cuts this really hard turn and sends her flying off, and then just cranks it, just rooster tails right off past her. And it's like, okay, no, he's going to stay a horrible human being. I see what they're doing now. It perfectly sets the tone for the show.
That's great.
It's hilarious. It does everything it needs to do without not a lot. Like, a lot happens, but at the same time, not a lot happens. And so it's hilarious. And if you like that episode, then you're gonna like the entire series. So
I came across this show by complete accident because I was at my friend's house and her boyfriend was rewatching it because I think it's streaming on HBO Max.
Yes.
And I had for some reason I went there. I don't remember why, but I was there for a couple of days in a row, like after work, and he had it on in the background, and I just found myself like talking and then like just enamored by the screen, and I'm like, yeah. And it's before I knew it, I sat through the whole first season. That show is so funny, and for all the reasons you just mentioned in the pilot, but just the progression, and at least in that first season, where like the disconnect in his brain and reality is.
Yeah, he's a
hysterical.
fucking monster. Like
he's a fucking monster.
But they don't try to redeem him.
No,
at
that's
all.
what's great. And like I said, that little swerve at the end where he's not actually getting any better, that ends up being the entire premise of the show. Is every time Kenny Powers, you think he's finally going to do right. Spoiler alert, he doesn't.
Yep.
He doesn't ever do right.
He's never good.
And who leaves Katie Mixon on the side of the road? A monster. A monster.
Absolutely.
That's a good
God,
one.
just like in that first couple of minutes, like when he's getting traded to all the different teams, and they're like, "So what do you think about New York?" And he just goes, "Oh, you mean Jew York?" And then it like immediately shows that he gets traded. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, like he's
just it's hilarious.
I hate when they try to make characters that are. This is why I hated Everybody Loves Raymond, because everyone's an asshole on that show, and they try to like redeem everybody, and I'm like, either you're an asshole or you're not. I'm not gonna like you.
Right.
Like, stop trying to make me like you. Like, lean into it.
Not everyone's an asshole. Ray Barone is a treasure.
They're either an asshole or a pussy, because Ray is weak in that show.
No, sorry, not Ray. I meant Frank Barone, the dad. He's amazing.
We're gonna talk
oh my
about
God. Okay, we can talk about that another day.
If you allow injustice to happen, you are a part of the injustice.
Okay. Lord have mercy.
Save it for Sports with My Family, our upcoming Everybody Loves Raymond podcast.
That's great.
That's good.
Oh, man. All right. So our number 4 is we're a Batman the Animated Series, Outlander, Arrested Development, and Eastbound and Down. Next up, we've got our number 3s.
Number three.
1, 2.
It's
a magic number.
1, 2, 3. Ding, 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 ding.
This is what the inside of my brain just sounds like. Just everybody talking at the same time.
All right. Number 3, what you got, Mike?
This was kind of a toss-up because I have 2 honorable mentions that I could swap in, but I'm gonna go with my original list. And it's kind of cheating because I'll just say it's Sherlock, the BBC show Table.
Ooh.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
I do have it.
I will stop
as
talking.
an honorable mention.
Actually, you'll be able to talk about it in like 2 picks.
So we got Sherlock tabled. What you got for number 3, Missy?
I am going with Schitt's Creek as my number 3. So
good one.
Schitt's Creek was my, when everyone last year was like baking bread and fucking gardening and shit like that, I was just escaping, and this was that show that I had heard about for years. And of course I was super late because that's my thing. But this pilot, this is one of the few shows that I can say confidently, one of the very, very few shows that the pilot and the series finale are top shelf equal parts. Just doesn't lose its steam, gets even better once they put Patrick in. Debona, don't ruin a good time.
He's got facial expressions.
So Schitt's Creek starts out, for those of us that don't, for those of you that listening or watching that don't know, pretend the Kardashians were 4 people, right? A son, daughter, mom, and dad. And they went from Kardashian level to normal mortal, blue collar level. Right? They get everything. They lose everything in the first 5 minutes. And now they're stuck in this small town that the dad had bought as a joke as a bar mitzvah present, and now that's the only thing that they were able to keep in the IRS raid. And just the contrast, the reason why I was going back to my original point about like the plot the conflict had to get me from the jump, is that the contrast in where these four main characters start and where the rest of the town is so like obvious that it's like, where is this gonna go is like the first thing that I was like, this is gonna be either they're gonna make a lot of friends or they're gonna fucking get murdered. Like, it's just
like that could have very easily turned into a horror movie.
Yeah,
easily
100%.
you change the music to that show and it turns into a 30-minute drama.
Yeah.
Catherine O'Hare was able to get her rightful like renaissance moment out of this series. Eugene Levy, of course, they go way back, and Dan Levy, which we didn't know about, and also Katie, I forget her last name. But just the four main characters, so talented. The writing on the show is always crisp on top of it, and it's from the jump is like that, I think. And so because the pacing of the jokes for me is always hilarious, because with the parents it's always more slow, like, you know, traditional kind of, they could build it up, and with the younger characters it's always very like cutthroat, very sharp. So this is a show that I will forever and a day go back to as a comfort watch, and as a standalone for the series, it's top shelf. So that's why Schitt's Creek is my number 3.
I want to love this pick so much because I do love the show. But this is one of the main ones I was talking about when I can't let, but I had a feeling it might be on your list. That's why I referenced The Office and said I had to not let my feelings for the way the show develops color what I thought of the pilot. And when I go back and I watch that pilot, David and Alexis are so
awful.
Stiff. They're so stiff. But I mean, not just like awful as people, like the acting isn't there yet. Like they haven't figured out how to take these characters and open them up and let them breathe. And what they become is absolutely incredible. You know, a couple weeks ago, I had David and Stevie on my list, but that pilot was I think it was overly structured, because I think they were trying to figure out kind of what everybody was doing, which happens a lot in pilots. There wasn't any room for the David that we come to love to be David. And I understand that he develops into that, but this is the main one that I really wanted to put it on my list, because I do love that show. And it's my current comfort watch. I just started it again like last week. But when I did, I was like, oh man, this first season is so stiff. Like it's like you're Dan Levy, you're Catherine O'Hara, you're Chris Elliott. Like they are in it because they're seasoned and they know what they're doing. But those other characters, they needed to grow and breathe before the show became as wonderful as it was. I'm not saying that it's not a good pilot. It's just that's why it couldn't make my list, because I feel like looking back on it, it's just colored by the fact that as that show develops, it becomes amazing.
And I agree to all of that, but to me, I don't hold any of that against it, because that's the starting point. They have to fucking start that stiff and gross
That's
and
why
awful.
we each have our mountain.
Yeah, and so that for me, the whole journey is, not to paraphrase Alexis, but the whole journey is the reason why Schitt's Creek is great. But that pilot hooked me from the jump, so that's why it makes my mountain.
Fantastic.
And by the way, if we did this mountain like 3 months from now, it would change completely. So it's not like
funny. That's
it's
so
not
true.
like solid stuck in cement or anything like that.
Yeah.
All right, so Schitt's Creek, what you got, Jeff?
So, Mike, now we can talk about Sherlock, A Study in Pink. Let me see if what my issue is what your issue is. It's not an original story, the pilot. It's
A Study in Scarlet. It's
right. It's the adaptation of the Arthur Conan Doyle story.
The reason why I felt it was cheating is because it's an hour and a half long. It's a fucking movie. But it's the introduction into this world. But that's how British television is. They just do like, hey, you're going to get 3 episodes, but it's going to be like 3 major budget motion pictures. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's like, and genuinely, that first introduction to Sherlock, I remember very specifically when you see the text messages go up on the screen, I was like, this is different. This is cool. I was immediately engaged. And then there, because it didn't feel like watching a pilot, it felt like watching a movie.
Right.
There was moments where you could kind of sit and let yourself feel like this is a fucking movie, and then it picks up again at the end, like, and then you realize, oh, there's so much more coming. Now, this is one of those shows that I feel the first 2 seasons are good.
Yeah. 100%.
But there's no doubt in my mind that the pilot had to go on my mountain. Like,
yeah, like, see, the one of the things I loved, and you could tell in the pilot, is Stephen Moffat was one of the showrunners who famously is the showrunner for Doctor Who and so on. If you watch, I actually watched the commentary of them talking about the first episode, and he and the other showrunner both were like, the creators said, we need to do an updated version of Sherlock. They loved what Robert Downey Jr. was doing with his version of Sherlock, and they were like, there's a different way that we can present these old stories, like A Study in Scarlet, but modernize it, which they did do little changes. Like, he doesn't smoke his pipe, he has a nicotine patch because he's addicted to nicotine. Like,
he does heroin. He's a heroin addict who's recovering, but not because he's silenced. Like, he's the torment of being like, having that mental, where he's a high functioning sociopath. That's how he literally says it. He's like, no, I'm a high functioning sociopath. I do all this shit because I know, like, that he's solving things too quickly. Mm-hmm. So we get introduced to Benedict Cumberbatch. Like, this is my first introduction to him. Yes. But then we see Martin Freeman being John Watson, and that introduction of John Watson in that show, with the partnership and the fact that he's just like thoroughly impressed by Sherlock, like, you get it, and you like immediately. I have a big thing. We talk about it on Woo Bro. We talk about it on every other podcast I'm on with, about that suspension of disbelief in that moment, or like relationships being built without really earning it, and TV pilots have a lot of problem with that for me. Like, there's some TV pilots where I'm like, how are these people friends? Like that kind of thing.
Right.
But in this particular one, they literally, from the jump, boom, you get these two people, because this guy's so smart. He already knows that he's going to latch onto this guy and be his best friend, and they go. And then it becomes an awesome procedural.
Well, and the introduction, you were to go back to what you're saying. One of my favorite parts in the pilot was the first time you really are introduced to Sherlock is he's beating a dead body with a riding crop to see how the bruising happens.
Yes, yeah,
and that's from the book. In the books, he did that as well.
Yeah,
that's the thing with Moffat, is that they got a lot of stuff and they incorporated things from the different stories into the episodes, like names of people, stuff like that. Like, there's a gentleman in the pilot. This is another thing I loved about the pilot, because I'm a Sherlock nerd. James Phillimore, that was one of the only cases Sherlock never solved. They gave a guy the name of that character, and it was based off of an actual event that happened in, I think, Seattle. Like, it was an actual case that happened in Seattle. Like, so they throw in these little things. Martin Freeman wasn't the original choice for Watson. They actually brought in Matt Smith before he auditioned for Doctor Who.
I can't picture it without Martin Freeman.
And that's what they said in the commentary, was that they were two Sherlocks.
Yes.
Him and Matt Smith.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Martin Freeman, when Martin Freeman got there, they realized he had, and you can tell, this is why I'm saying this, because, Mike, I agree 100%. Benedict Cumberbatch completely changed the way he acted as Sherlock when Martin Freeman came in and started doing the auditions with him.
Yeah.
Like, he caused him to change and become more into this character and adjust the character that he had been playing the same way for every other audition. And you see that on the screen.
It bothers me that we haven't seen them together in the MCU yet, because they're both in there.
Right.
Yes,
They're both in there with Doctor Strange and then that other guy from Black Panther.
Yeah.
And they have not met yet. And I really want them to have some sort of interaction at some point in the because even in Thor Ragnarok, they do that 221B Bleecker Street, and because that's where Doctor Strange lives. They making a Sherlock joke.
Yeah,
and it's amazing that show hit the ground running. Like, I remember people were telling me about it, that it hadn't even been released over here yet, and people were like, "Yo, you gotta watch this Sherlock show." And I'm like, "How the fuck do I watch?" And they're like, "Pirate it, do it." And they were like genuinely like, "You, if there's a way for you to get it, because it's the best show on television." And for a while there, they were right. That shit was it's on my mountain for a reason,
Yeah.
and it is 100% one of the best TV pilots. But I do feel it's like a little like kind of like cheating because it's an hour and a half long. It's a fucking movie.
Well, I have another one on my list that's an hour and a half. So to me, that's
Sherlock season 2.
Yeah, but no, yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Cool.
All right, so we got Sherlock and Sherlock there. My number 3 is one that I wasn't sure if it was going to make my list until I went back and I read and realized that everything, like there was this sequence of events that I thought took place over the course of multiple episodes. And going back and reading the pilot description for this episode, I realized it all happened in the one. My number 3 is the Breaking Bad pilot.
Table.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense.
All right, so for our number 3s, we had Sherlock ×2, Schitt's Creek, and Breaking Bad. So we'll get on to our number 2s.
Number 2.
Two. I don't remember any of
The
this.
sequel. To
Dose.
Una.
The sequel
the
to
magic
Una.
number.
2's the magic number. Ding, 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 ding.
All right, Mike, what's your number 2?
Oh, right. I have to say things. My number 2. Should I swap it out? It's hard to say because it was.
Go with your feelings. Go with your feelings.
It's such a good one. I like because I have my mountain, my honorable mentions, and now we're talking about audibles. But I'm gonna stick with my original mountain. The first thought, best thought, Modern Family.
Mine too.
That's your number 2?
Yeah.
Okay. We can
You
talk
go
about
first.
To me, that's up there in terms of pilots with Arrested Development, in the sense of like, it starts off with showing you 3 separate families and all of the shit going on with them. The first time you really get, like, the first time I had seen that style of like the single the
No Neary.
the what the fuck am I talking? The confessional, like in
like
that
the
sense,
mockumentary kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not the first time I had seen it, but it was done so well. The guy who plays Phil Dunphy is amazing. The Sofia Vergara, the I want to say Al Bundy, Ed O'Neill.
Yeah,
like they show all these separate families, and then for them to come together at the end, and you realize that they're all one family. At the end is when they drop that reveal, and I remember like at the end of that episode, like I never even finished watching Modern Family. I just watched the first few seasons, and I dropped out, but I still remember that as being like oh my god, that's amazing moment.
Neary commented, by the way.
Yeah, we saw it. We don't have to mention it to anyone.
Okay, good.
Man, Masters.
We haven't gotten to the honorable mentions.
You want to say it out loud?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey, everybody! If
Don't say
you're
it.
in the comments, if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube or Facebook, send us your honorable mentions because we will read them during our honorable mentions segment. Your TV pilot / first episode. Submit it in the comments right now.
All right,
And
Missy, what do you think about Modern Family?
Okay, so this one of those sitcoms where there's really nothing that I can relate to when it comes to these like family sitcoms, even the ones where like they're purposefully dysfunctional for TV.
Everybody loves Raymond.
Not really dysfunctional, but you know, for the comedy of it. And so I again was late to the Modern Family party, and this I thought it was a regular, like, you know, because ABC is really good about doing like family shows, and that's like their niche obviously now because it's Disney or whatever. But I didn't think that last 5 minutes with the reveal of Lily
Yes.
is what
He's not that dramatic.
I
It's
mean,
beautiful.
I think the all-star characters of that show just from the jump are Phil and Cam, and they stay consistently like that the entire series. I saw the whole series up until the last, to the series finale. And that's just a fact. The Cam and Phil are, if at any point those two actors would have chosen to drop from the show, the show's over. Because even the Sofia Vergara like angle, the whole like gimmick of having the lady with the overzealous, accent and super hot, like incredibly hot,
She
like, oh
wasn't
my god.
Latina. She was Latina.
Yes,
You
she's
know.
that. She's that, like the caricature version of a Hispanic woman,
Mhm.
but so fucking hot. It's like outrageous. And so this pilot does a great thing about, again, I'm kind of into it the first 15 minutes. I'm like, all right. And Cam gets me from the jump. Mitchell, the contrast, the conflict between Cam and Mitchell, their dynamic is also like another hook, because if you remove that from the cast, then I don't care about whatever happens afterwards.
It was such a well balanced.
It was super well balanced.
Script.
Yeah.
Like the characters are, because like a lot of shows, the reason why the pilots are not on the like shows that got better as they went along, there's plenty of shows like that. There's very few shows that get the tone of the characters right from the beginning.
From the jump. Yes.
I was Brooklyn Nine-Nine was not on my list at all, not even honorable mentions, because that first season you can see them feeling it out. Like they're not all ironed out. Like the Modern Family from the get-go, it's like, no, these are the characters. They almost exist in like a real life place in the writers' minds, because they're like consistent the whole time.
Well, when they got to the series finale, how they do like that hour special, whatever, the send off, they took you into the writers' room, and a lot of the storylines were pulled from real life experiences. There was a version of each of these families that was pulled from reality, and so. Again, for a really strong script, really strong cast, I'm in it and I'm watching it and I'm fine. But that last 5 minutes with Lily's reveal is just what took it from like a 6 to a 10, like immediately.
That show, I don't know if it's the pilot, but it has one of my favorite jokes of all time. It has a lot of phrases that I still say to this day. And one of them is, I don't know if it's a pilot. It's when the bike gets stolen and then he goes to buy a new bike. And then he like where he goes, touche, salesman. I say that so much that I forget where it comes from, and then I'll catch myself being like,
and find me another character, a TV character that we could call the king of dad jokes / humor than Phil Dunphy. It doesn't. That's it. That's the pinnacle. And he starts
and
right
Julie
off the bat
Bowen,
when he's running his mouth and he's like, oh, WTF? Like, why the face? Like, it's like so Magoo from the jump, and it's fantastic.
He's great.
And Julie Bowen, of course, was,
and this is
hold her own.
years after Happy Gilmore, and she aged just amazing.
She's pregnant with twins that first season.
Really?
Yes. That's why she's behind pillows the whole time.
Wow.
TV magic.
My problem with Modern Family is that Ty Burrell, my first interaction with him was in Dawn of the Dead remake.
I don't know about that.
He's like a douchey dude.
Yeah, he's awful in that. All right, so we got 2 votes for Modern Family. Jeff, what's your number 2?
So my number 2, my number 1 have been flip-flopping, but I think I'm gonna go with my heart, and I'm gonna go ahead and put Breaking Bad, the pilot, as my number 2.
Number 2 got 2 doubles.
No, well, yeah, it was my number 3, but yeah.
Oh, right.
I'm on the scorecard.
Breaking Bad is just it's one of those shows that was solid the whole run through. But that pilot episode, it's another one, and even though it's in a completely different like genre as Arrested Development, where you've got this guy where you literally see in this one episode the entirety of this poor guy's existence and it sets up perfectly what you're going to get for the rest of the show. The every little aspect of the comedy, of the sadness, of the action, of every little interaction sets you up for the next seasons that are going to happen. That opening shot, if we ever do a mountain of best opening shots of a TV series of just the pants flying in the air,
Yes,
and the RV just barreling down the highway, and you look inside and he's in his underwear with a fucking gas mask because he drugs the drug dealers who are trying to kill him. You know, it's and you feel for Bryan Cranston, like he got that role because of an X-Files role that he did, where he was an anti-Semite who kidnapped fought Mulder. And when they were working on Breaking Bad, they needed somebody who you could love and hate at the same time, because Walter White you feel bad and you love him, but he becomes this monster later on.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just such a cool pilot. Like you were saying, Debona, I don't want to take up all the time, but I know you were saying that there was a lot of stuff that you remembered from the series that ended up being from the pilot.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like when you think back about the beginning of Breaking Bad and you remember you immediately remember it starts off with him talking to the video camera, then it goes back. And so and it goes back and it shows when he finds out he has cancer and how he gets hooked up with Jesse and all this. And you remember all of that, but then to remember that it all happened in one episode. We saw him get diagnosed with cancer, go on a meth bust with his brother-in-law, decide to cook meth, get hooked up with this student that he used to have, kill a couple of drug dealers, crash an RV. I mean, like you so much happens in that first episode that I tend to think that it was the first couple of episodes where all of these things happen. And so they don't start off making meth successfully. Like their very first cook, it's all hell breaks loose. And like you said,
but hasn't that happened to all of us? I mean,
well, and
I don't like to talk about it, but
it's the growing pains of meth.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the connecting threads here that, one of the phrases we keep saying is sets the tone for the whole show. But again, this is another one where you realize this isn't just going to be guy sells meth, guy's good at selling meth, family lives happily ever after. It's immediately like, yo, drug dealing is bad. And you've got to be involved in bad people. And shit goes wrong a lot. Like, we're not going to candy coat the fact that this guy's selling drugs just because he's doing it to support his family. We're going to show you that if you decide to do this, it doesn't take much for things to go absolutely horribly wrong.
Now I want to see the growing pains of meth. Show me that smile with no teeth. Don't waste another minute shooting heroin. I want to give you blue.
It sounds like
as long as we've got each other. No, sorry.
It sounds
Yep.
She knew it.
I knew it too. It sounds like Breaking Bad does the complete opposite of what the pilot of Weeds did. Because with Weeds, like, it's a very slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No pun intended. Until shit goes sideways. I feel like it's the
on Weeds,
end of
you're
first.
absolutely right. Like on Weeds, she's a successful suburban drug dealer. Like
For
when
a
the
whole
show
season
starts.
until it takes a turn. So and with
Breaking
this
Bad,
one, it sounds like you're going from the jump, which
it's immediately like
interesting.
it's immediately like, yo, shit goes sideways real quickly. Also, one of the first times that I remember, now granted it's cable not broadcast, but I was watching this and I was like, oh look, those are naked breasts. Like just on TV.
He takes her in a manly fashion.
Yeah. And I was
which goes right into the second episode.
The ex-student?
No, he at the episode ends with Walter White like taking his wife in a manly fashion in bed, and it starts episode 2 with them finishing.
But also at one point, like when he goes to find Jesse, he's like sneaking out of this girl's house
to the
and
plot.
just like throwing his shit out the window.
That's right.
And so I was like, wait, what channel am I on right now?
This is the show that brought us the Hug It Out, bitch.
Yeah.
No,
that's
Entourage.
Entourage.
That's Jeremy Piven. Yeah.
There's another.
This is
there's
bitch.
Science bitch.
Which he never actually says.
Bitch.
Which he never actually says.
He says, yeah, bitch, science.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to know something? I've never seen an episode of that show, and I know that piece of trivia because it was like all over the place. I have not seen one episode of the show.
Oh my God.
This might be a season that I am a part of, because if we do seasons of Breaking Bad, I've not seen one episode.
It's so good, and it is a show where every episode is as good, if not better, than the one before it, and it is just progressively so. And it starts off that way, so that's why it was my number 3.
And there's one telling scene, and I'll leave it at this. Towards the end, where he hears sirens in the distance, and he thinks all hope is lost. He literally grabs one of the drug dealer's guns without hesitation, puts it under his chin, pulls the trigger, nothing happens. And in classic Walter White fashion, he starts messing around with it, pointing it, and it goes off later. And he's just like, I can't even kill myself right.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he's standing there in the desert in his tighty whities with a gun, hearing sirens, thinking it's the end. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
The cinematography, everything was just amazing in that first episode.
Very, very well done. All right, so we got Breaking Bad. My number 2 is actually an animated pick. And I just said that Breaking Bad is my second favorite show of all time. This is the pilot of my favorite show of all time. And so I know it sounds like I'm breaking my own rule about letting the show color how good the pilot is, but I stand by the fact this pilot's amazing. It is the pilot to Futurama, Space Pilot 3000.
That's an honorable mention.
I mean,
the pilot of Futurama so amazingly set exactly what you were going to find for humor in this show.
Yeah.
It immediately is like, okay, look, the jokes are smart, but they're also dumb. We're going to have fun, but we're going to make you think. It just kind of, just throws you into this situation where it's like, all right, it's 1,000 years in the future. Here we go. This is what 1,000 years from now is going to look like. And we get to experience what it would be like while Fry is experiencing it, because we're blown away as he's blown away. He meets Leela and she's only got the one eye, and it's like, oh, okay, weird. And then he meets a robot, and it's like, okay, and there's a suicide booth, and there's all these things. And so we're getting to be equally as shocked as Fry is as these things pop up. And we're seeing that it's like, okay, so it's funny. Kind of dark, it's kind of smart, but it's fast paced. Like, I see where they're going with this. One of the things that's amazing about the pilot of Futurama is there are Easter eggs in the pilot of Futurama that pay off years down the road. Years. Like, if you go back and you watch the pilot of Futurama right now, you can see Nibbler's silhouette under the desk as he falls into the cryo chamber in the first scene of that episode. It is years later that you finally find out that Nibbler was involved in him falling into the cryo chamber because they needed him alive in the future, and his people knew about that. So you go back and you watch the pilot, and they drew in Nibbler's silhouette into that. The first time you're watching, you don't notice it. Then when they flash back, you're like, oh, so they changed it. But no, you can go back and you can see that in that episode. That's awesome. There's a lot. One of my favorite jokes, and it's one that it took them years to repeat it, but it ends up happening again. They're trapped in this building. They're all being chased for taking out their job chips or whatever. And the police knock on the door and start screaming, and Bender's standing there, and just one single brick just falls out of his ass straight to the ground. And it just, and that gag, when I saw that, I was like, this show, it's so incredible. I love Futurama. Like I said, it is my favorite show of all time, but this particular episode so perfectly encompasses everything that you're going to see. And you're so shocked by so many things that happen in this that then it just becomes commonplace to experience these things for the first time. And it tells a great story. We see how everybody meets, and you do get those moments. You were talking about how people aren't always friends right away. Like, you get to see how they're forced to be friends and how they're forced into each other's lives, and then how they all end up together as the Planet Express crew.
Good news, everyone.
Yes, exactly.
But the thing is also that that does not change throughout the course of the entire show. Every show is a exposure to a new weirdness. Like, the premise of the show is that the future is so fucked up that at every turn it's fucking weird.
Yes.
So everything is weird. Like, that the premise of the show isn't that he's in the future, is that every day is going to be weird. From every episode is going to be us seeing this weird shit. So that's why they can introduce all kinds of crazy shit as they go. This is a great one. I did not put it. I didn't think about it until way later, and then that was why I was like, well.
So my number 2 is Futurama. So we had 2 Modern Families, a Breaking Bad, and Futurama. So do you want to do a couple of comments here, and then we'll get into honorable mentions?
Well, Neri has to be part of the action. He says He-Man and Masters of the Universe, the newest one, which 100%, yes, the pilot episode is fucking awesome.
Yes,
it really is great. He also, when we were talking about Modern Family, he says her name is Lily. Isn't that going to be hard for her to say? The most underrated joke of the whole show. That is such a hard ass joke to put in a fucking pilot, like
full of white people.
Yeah. Oh, and he also says This Is Us. The pilot episode is stunningly and beautifully well done.
There's one I've never seen a single episode of.
I have not. Friday Night Lights, This Is Us, Breaking Bad, Brooklyn Nine-Nine again. I did not. This is Neri's Mountain. Friday Night Lights, This Is Us, Breaking Bad, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and honorable mention to The Wire, Arrested Development, and The Closer.
Which one's Kira Cedric?
Cedric. He recently binged it, and he's a fan.
Oh, he's like when Michael, like they do that episode of The Office where Michael Scott just has nicknames for Pam based on the last movie he watched.
Boobala.
Yeah.
$1 Million Baby.
He's going to try and kill me.
He's going to kill me.
All right. Yeah. So, thank you, Neri, for your list. If you're listening and you want to put your list in, make sure you watch us live as we broadcast. You can put it up as a comment on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, and we will read it during honorable mentions. All right, Mike, what are your honorable mentions?
I put The Office because it was so different at the time. And also, if you watch the British and the American Office pilots, they're based on the same exact script, and you can see the Americanizing of it.
Yeah.
You can see the difference of it. I thought it was a great pilot, like in terms of how do you even make a pilot based off of The Office, Freaks and Geeks.
Man, I didn't even think about that one.
Freaks and Geeks is one of my favorite shows of all time. So many of my shows, my favorite shows, don't go anywhere, which is a testament to apparently my taste is too cool for network
obscure.
Nah, I'm just too cutting edge. I'm too avant-garde. I didn't want, like, this is where I disappear up my own ass. Like Newsroom, all the Aaron Sorkin shows. All the Aaron Sorkin shows definitely have.
I have Newsroom as an honorable mention too,
and it's a little unsavory now because he's a fucking monster. But House of Cards,
that open episode.
I thought you were gonna say Jeff Daniels is a monster, and I'm like, no.
I was like, wait, why is Jeff Daniels a monster?
What did he do now?
Yeah, no, but
and that Newsroom pilot, the reason I ended up moving it to honorable mention is because it really boils down to the one scene. That's what makes that whole episode. Why do you think America's the greatest country in the world? It isn't. And like that monologue that whole episode boils down to that one scene.
Yeah. And to be fair, that I did watch the whole show, and that is one show that just disappeared up its own ass trying to explain shit to you like you're an idiot in the second season. And yeah, I get it, but also like, this is impossible to write fiction that's crazier than the news was becoming at the time.
Yeah.
So like it was just so pretentious at a certain point. But that first episode, even what comes after that opening scene, like that was such a good introduction to a show of what it was going to be, and it was going to try and be this like, fast-paced, intense look at behind the scenes of cable news and whatever. But now it's like a cartoon of itself, And House of Cards kind of became that as well. But when Frank Underwood starts talking to the fucking camera, immediately I was like, what is happening? And it was just this. He was a monster, and you like that's the thing. He is zero redemption. He was just let a monster be a monster. I don't want to care. Just let him do his thing, and then that's engaging. But I don't want you to make me think that I have to like this guy. And that was my honorable mention list. There's a couple others, but like whatever.
Missy, what do you got for honorable mentions?
My honorable mentions are ER. Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes.
Ooh.
Once Upon a Time. Went to complete shit. but it started out great. And The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, that first episode was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
all right, Jeff, what do you got for honorable mentions?
all right, so two of my honorable mentions are shows that started off great and then screwed the pooch, which is Heroes. And
That's the one I pulled from number 4 to put in Eastbound and Down.
Heroes
and
is great.
Lost is another one that first episode was solid, and then it just went. It got lost.
I eliminated Lost from my list because of the fact that it was that thing where it was 2 episodes, like the pilot. So I was like,
right,
an hour and a half. We got like a whole movie, but yeah, no Heroes. That I had that. I moved that to honorable mentions at the last minute. That was Genesis. But just such a great episode, such an amazing introduction to so many characters in a way that you didn't really know what was going on, but it made sense.
Actually, I that show got screwed over by the writer's strike. There's a bunch of those like early 2000s shows that got fucked by that writer's strike.
And then they just never recovered.
Because there were 2 shows that I'm thinking of now that the pilots were incredible, but the shows just disappeared. The Riches. Did you ever watch The Riches with Eddie Izzard and Minnie Driver?
Mm-hmm.
Fucking amazing show, but it got cut short. But that first season of The Riches is one of the best seasons of television, period. I think everyone should go watch it. And the 4400, which got copied by Heroes and a couple of other shows. But that 4400 was fucking bonkers good. And that first episode was great. That pilot was fantastic. And it got both those shows got fucked over by the writers' strike.
Yeah. Well, hold on. I got a couple. Yeah, because then what you said, Aaron Sorkin, West Wing. I'm on my 7th probably viewing of that show, and then just to Misfits is a British show that it's about these these troublemaking kids that all gain superpowers, and that first episode has a lot going on in one part, and it's a pretty cool setup. And then just really quick, 24, that first episode was dope.
Most of mine have been mentioned. So the only one I really have to add is that Watchmen series that ran on HBO Max.
Yes.
The pilot episode. It's summer and we're running out of ice. Like so much happened, and even though you didn't really know what any of it was, you got introduced to a ton of characters. It immediately kind of made you realize that nothing was what it seemed, and you were in for a hell of a ride.
Cops with balaclavas on instead of wow, so crazy that show.
God, that show is amazing. All right, and we've got some more.
Yeah, we have some more.
My dad.
Yeah, Peter Mercancini. He says Mrs. Brown's Boys, which I'm not familiar with.
That's a British show that he found on BritBox on Amazon that he's obsessed with. That it's one of those like old school shows that the man dresses up like a woman and he's playing this character of a woman, but it's like a Mama's Family kind of like type.
Like a Medea? Is it British?
But
Medea?
it's dirty. But it's like dirty as hell. Like it's really like there's an episode of her waxing her all around that. Like, but he's been trying to get me to watch. I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But he's
he also says Letterkenny.
God, there are so many little quotable like the cold open of that show, the very first episode. It's hard work picking stones and baling hay, but it sure as hell beats fighting hosers with treasure trails. Like that shit it's
there's a lot
so good. I love
that's one that I've been meaning. It's on the list that like I have so many such a huge backlog of shows, and I keep hearing about new ones, and I'm like, nobody tell me to watch another thing ever again. I'm done. I can't. There's so much. Neri is going crazy with more suggestions. House MD, the pilot's very good. He's freaking out. Oh my god, Veep was apparently good.
About Veep,
revolutionary, fourth wall breaking. Veep was fourth wall breaking. Dirt with Courtney Cox was killed by the writer's strike. Amazing show. No one ever hears about it now.
Dirt was great.
And Elementary was dope as fuck too. Okay.
Dirt was a great show.
I don't remember. I was on Elementary as a cockfighting attendee.
What?
No. I'm sorry. That's a different show. I got it mixed up because they shot in the same place. I was a cockfighting attendee on some what's her name, Deborah Messing show, and then I was a lawyer on the Elementary one. But I remember being on set of that show, and I'm like, Lucy Liu and this guy. Oh yeah, I'll watch this show, and then I never watched it.
All right. So
did you make hackers jokes to him?
Huh?
Did you make hackers jokes?
Zero cool.
Crash override.
Oh my god.
All right.
1,507 systems in one day. And he's like, get this motherfucker off the set.
Why is somebody saying we have no names? No names.
No names.
All right. So that's going
All
to
right.
take us into our number ones.
Number one.
After this, there is no turning back.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And then
And
there's Nelly.
number one.
There we go.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
it. Do it. Ding, ding, ding. All right, Mike, what's your number one?
My number one, and it's because I love it so much. It was the first thing I thought of was Firefly.
Mine too. That's my number one.
That's your number one? Jeff, bro. Come on.
So
I didn't
Serenity's
mention
my
it
number
because
one.
I didn't.
The
wanna ruin
real,
it.
well, we'll get to it. We'll get to
Yeah,
it.
no, go for
right.
it.
No, yeah, you're right.
So that, yeah,
Well,
well, when it gets to, or do you want to do it now?
You wanna
go
just go
ahead.
now?
Man. You guys
Go ahead,
both
Mike.
say
Okay,
go.
this was like the forever story about how Fox fucked up Firefly,
Mhm.
because Fox genuinely they showed all the episodes out of order.
Mhm.
The original episode they showed was not the pilot; it was another pilot that they forced them to write, where they do like more actiony, train heisty things and more sci-fi
Yeah, the
stuff.
train job.
Yeah, that's why I was asking if you meant the train job or if you meant Serenity.
No, and then sometimes like I'll go back to watch it, to revisit the show. It's harder now because Joss Whedon is an asshole now, so we have to be.
I tried watching Dollhouse and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, you can
no.
see it all.
I can't. I was like, I watched the first episode and I was like,
Yeah, knowing what I know now, it's a little weird to go back and visit it. But in the moment, at the time, that show, like when you watch even now, the first episode where you see the loss just from the opening scene, you immediately you're like, okay, I know exactly who this guy is. This is a guy who's broken and he lost a war. He lost a war. How do you then it cuts to this other stuff, and then they introduce this Wild West type terraforming worlds situation, and at every turn there's some character who's like fun and engaging, and then all of a sudden there's a fucking girl, there's a heist, there's like it's just so action packed. It's like
Wash deserved better.
yeah, 100%.
and you know what, like Joss Whedon has gone back and said that he wouldn't have killed him, whatever. It's like, yeah, but you throw tantrums like a little fucking baby if you don't get your way, and now you've fucked your properties, and now nobody wants to work with you, and also you're a real misogynistic piece of shit, and also xenophobic and kind of racist in a lot of ways. So it's hard to like watch, but as a show separated from the art from the artist, that is one of like the most engaged I've ever been in a pilot. Like boom, immediately I'm like, I want this to last forever.
Yeah,
Oh, did you hear that outside?
Yeah.
There's
that
thunder
thunder?
going outside. There's the world.
Oh,
is
is that
ending
what
outside.
that was?
In New York, not Florida. This is
It's
New York.
Reavers. No.
Yeah.
So this is, most people know this is my favorite show of all time. Like my son's named Nathan. That's not a coincidence. And
Is that named Mal?
well, we tried.
Malcolm?
If we were gonna have a girl, it was gonna be Kaylee Jane. That was gonna be our girl's name. But Jane spelled like Jane does on the
Jane
show.
Cobb.
Yeah. But so I rewatched this today. I hadn't rewatched the pilot in a few years, and as much of a piece of shit as Joss Whedon is, the writing that he did in this pilot, and this is an hour and a half pilot. So this is another. That's why I told you I have another hour and a half long thing. But like you said, you see Mal. It starts off on the Battle of Serenity Valley. You see Mal. You see this man who had hope. He had drive when it looked like it was like the worst possible situation. He was trying to rally the troops. He was like, no, they're coming. They're going to do this. He gets destroyed. And then you see him. You see his character development of him being this prick. But then you see those moments of caring and lightheartedness. Then you see the bad side of him. Then you see he just constantly fluctuates. He's this dynamic character that isn't just one stereotype. Right. He's
the brooding hero. He's the like anti-hero,
right?
But he's overly heroic for a villain, but also he's kind of a dick for a hero. But it's all about his crew and the freedom, the pursuit of the next job and the freedom and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. it's one of those shows that's like one of the biggest what ifs in entertainment for me.
Can't
like
take the sky from me.
you can't burn the land and boil the sea. You can't take the sky from me. Like it's still me. Like I still think like if I just watched a couple episodes of it like a few months ago, and it was generally one of those moments where I'm like, yeah, you can't take the sky. You know, like I was like, I must have been in the right frame of mind to listen to it where I'm like, that's right. You can't do that. You know, like
and then
stupid.
like Joss Whedon introduces you to this world where it's not very unrealistic, where China's one of the superpowers that you know, like everybody's cursed. One of the
never show
brilliant
any
things,
fucking Chinese people.
Well, yeah, but they one of the ways he got around being able to curse is he did everything in Mandarin.
Yeah.
So he's able to have all these people curse and really be the characters that they're supposed to be, these dirty, gritty people that are on this beat up Firefly class ship, you know, and
crushing on Kaylee, you know.
Yeah.
Inara being this like ethereal beauty and just like what a mix on that show.
The sat and like you get to meet these characters. Like one of my favorite characters on the show was always Book, because he was always so mysterious, and even in this you learn a little bit about him, but you still don't. It's interesting that like he's basically a priest in this world, but the best interactions he has is with the prostitute and you know, with a companion. But him and her have these amazing it's this weird mutual respect that you didn't expect to see, you know. The characters, you know, the interactions, like the how it, like the jokes, like he when he goes in and he's like, Kaylee died, and then Simon walks in and she just waves at him, and then you see them all laughing on the deck, and he's like, no, you did it, you're you know.
I will never not love Alan Tudyk in whatever he does, and and that was one of the first things that ever like that I really was like, this is my favorite character. Him and Gina Torres was like, this is relationship goals if there ever was relationship goals. You mean like there's Gina Torres, also Cuban. American is Cuban heritage, but yeah, she's amazing. And her as like this warrior wife, and then Wash as like this goofy pilot, you know, still kind of a badass or whatever. It's like what I would want from like a relationship. Like it's relationship goals, but also like I would want us to both be both of them. You know what I mean? Like at different times. It was like the perfect mashup.
The writing, the Joss Whedon, what I love about this is the show, this show in general, but the pilot is just the way that he presents the dialogue is just brilliantly done. It's this.
Yes.
It's constantly
very snappy.
This, but it's not, and Missy's gonna probably kill me, but it's not the annoying thing I hear whenever somebody's watching Gilmore Girls.
Oh, don't say Gilmore Girls. Yes.
Oh no.
But it's not. But it's a quick.
I like what I like. I don't care.
No, I'm not knocking it. But it's that quick-wittedness back and forth that I absolutely love, and it fits with all those characters, you know. But yeah, I think it's such a great there's no the reverse.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up. We've been talking about Firefly for too long.
Yeah.
All right.
Technically we have 10 minutes of talking.
we've got 2 votes for Firefly. Missy, what's your number 1?
My number 1, and Neri is watching, so sorry, not sorry. But my number 1 is Newsroom.
Oh,
that's why I was freaking out when you were talking about it.
Okay, you could have said table.
Yeah.
Do we table honorable mentions?
Yeah.
I couldn't, like, you're frozen on my screen, so I couldn't see if you were like giving us like a don't talk too much about it or anything like that.
I'm frozen?
Yeah, your feet's
mid-chew.
In mid-chew. There now you're back.
Now you're back.
That can't be attractive. Okay. My bad. I don't know what's going on because I'm connected to my router, so she's being a little bitch. Okay. The Newsroom. So I am a huge Aaron Sorkin fan. Huge. So much so that in not so many words, I've brought him up one too many times, and Neri was lovingly asked me to please shut the fuck up about Aaron Sorkin. So that being said, the Newsroom to me at this point, and I agree with the points that you guys were making about how it got too full of itself, but last year, just go with me on this, Ryan Murphy had this short series 8-episode thing on Netflix called Hollywood. The whole concept of that show was, what if Hollywood made all the right moral choices from the jump, from the golden age of Hollywood, right? So inclusion and diversity and equity and all of that stuff, right? To me, at this point, the newsroom is just a what if journalism had integrity again.
Right.
And so that plays a big deal. Something that I find very interesting about going back to watching the pilot, which always leads me down watching the entire series again, is that a lot of the things that are brought up as red flags as part of a plot line ended up being a huge fucking precedent to the situation that we were in a few months ago. So I think what this pilot did great was that it again, it's my second my second drama on the mountain. Sitcoms are my jam, so it's really rare for me to get hooked into an hour-long drama. I tried to get into Friday Night Lights. It's too much like tragedy and sadness in the first 5 or 6 episodes. I haven't been able to push past it. But what this show did, I think, in the pilot was from the beginning, from the jump, it gets you in that what makes America the greatest country in the world. And his rant is just, in terms of a monologue, I would be shocked to see another example of an iconic monologue, I think, at this point, because even if you've never seen the newsroom, you've seen that clip.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the great thing about this the pilot is that it gave room to where everybody that ends up being an integral part of the story has their moment to kind of make their case to interest you, to invest into wherever it's going to happen next. The actual pilot that was aired was reshot because the first one Aaron Sorkin didn't like and he threw it away. And so they found their unaired pilot is their official pilot, but does it count as a pilot if it never made the? I don't know.
No.
This one counts.
So, aside from giving all the characters that you grow to love and root for throughout the series, even Dawn from the beginning, that very personal conflict between, between between host and producer, which on a professional level would be its own shit show. But knowing that as we move forward, how fucking much tension there is underneath for personal reasons just brings a complex to it that's, I don't think a lot of shows do very well in doing that intersection between personal and professional conflict, I would say. So I could run my mouth forever and ever about this show. I recommend it to a lot of people, and not a lot of people pay attention to me about how great it is, because I just think at this point it's a great way to go back, because a lot of the plot is pulled from headlines of 2012, 13, and 14, which was really the setup to where we landed.
You're not wrong. There was definitely moments where it's like
his rant about the Tea Party, his rant about so many things, the Koch brothers. I had never even heard of the Koch brothers, and it was because of this show that I was like, what the fuck is Citizens United? And just so educational and so, brainy, for lack of a better word, that, for somebody like me, it hooked me, and I forever ever and ever loved this show. I think that I'm sad that the last season was it felt rushed. And, I know that whatever, and Aaron Sorkin has gone on to, that masterclass website that, so I go in with some friends and I have it, and I took his masterclass, and it's fucking phenomenal. Like, just the shit that he talks about. But he also mentions that he's not entirely happy with how that show turned out. And I would love to get more about that, because I don't, again, as a viewer and novice writer, I think it's impeccable, but I would love to understand where he thinks he went wrong. Would be an interesting conversation. But so that's newsroom number 1 forever.
All right. So my number one was mentioned briefly in honorable mentions. This is a show that I have not kept up with because it eventually just kind of got to the point where I just didn't want to watch it anymore. But when this pilot aired, this show was the only thing I cared about. And it is Days Gone By, the pilot of The Walking Dead. This pilot was just amazingly well shot. There's not a ton of dialogue because, except for in flashbacks, until the very end of the episode, you are led to wonder if Rick Grimes is the last person on Earth. So you start off and you immediately see him kill a zombie. Like, they get you right away. Boom. All right, he's looking for gas. He killed a zombie. Then you get to find out how he ended up in a coma and how he's alone. And then you get all those really iconic scenes. Do not open, dead inside.
Actually, it says don't dead open inside.
Don't dead
Don't
open
dead
inside.
open
Yes. You get you get the scene of him like going into Atlanta while there's just the pile up of cars that are left coming out. And he's just riding a horse with a backpack with a duffel bag full of guns. And just this one was more, so many of the ones we've talked about, I've talked about ones that have great jokes or that tell a great story. But so often, and so many of the episodes we've talked about, it's been about character development. This pilot was about the scope of what this show could be. And it could show you what it would be like if the entire world ended and you just woke up and the world was over. And so until you see that helicopter that he's following on his horse, you think maybe there's nobody else left alive, and he's following it. And then he runs into his first major zombie horde when he gets to Atlanta, and he's on the horse and they eat the horse. And you get this, amazing all is lost moment. He drops his bag full of guns and he crawls under that tank. And you're just like, well, I don't know. Like, where do they go from here? Right. There's nobody to save him.
The end.
Yeah. And then you just get that voice on the walkie-talkie. Hey, you comfortable? And then it's like, oh shit, there are other people, and they know he's there. Like they can see him. And then it just ends, and you're hooked from that moment. You're like, I gotta see how he gets out of this. I gotta see who the other people are. I need to know how long this has been going on. How is anybody surviving? And like I said, and then you just get that overhead shot of just the horde that is Atlanta trying to close in on him in that tank. And it's just over. Yeah. And there's so much that you want to know, and there's so many hundreds of questions that you have, and they did all of this through just world building. And that, I think, is something that isn't done enough. Like we talk a lot about how the relationships of people, and all these episodes that we've talked about the relationships of people and how they got together, or whether or not we're supposed to immediately believe that they've been friends forever. And you find out that all of Modern Family is one big family. But just all of this to be done through just the visuals of the world ending blew me away. I had read the comic book since they started coming out. When this show came out, I was super hyped for it. And I just, I've hoped, and I hoped on hope that they were going to be able to pull it off. And when this show first started, they pulled it off. It was the perfect pilot in that it answered just enough questions while leaving you with so many more that you needed more of this show. You needed to know the fate of Rick. You needed to know whatever happened to Shane, because you knew about Shane a little bit from his flashback from when he got shot, and you needed to know all of these things. But it blew me away to rewatch it and realize how little dialogue there was, and it was like the Castaway of TV shows. For a while there with just Rick. So this is one that I thought of right away, and that's how it ended up being. That's why I ended up going with it with my number one. So the Walking Dead pilot, Days Gone By.
Nice. That is a fucking good pilot.
Curious question: when did they lose you?
So spoiler alert, if you're not current or don't watch The Walking Dead, I'm about to drop a major spoiler. They lost me when Carl got bit. Because while I felt like the show had fallen off at some points before then, the reason I was completely done there had absolutely nothing to do with the show and everything to do with the fact that In the comics, Carl went on to grow up and become my favorite character. And now that he wasn't going to exist anymore, I was like, fuck this. And so I was out. Literally, the last episode I saw was the mid-season finale where he lifts up his shirt and you see that he's bit. And I have not watched a single episode since. I will eventually go back and finish it. At this point, I'm just going to wait for it to be done, and then I'm going to go back and just watch it.
That's my plan.
Nah, I'm just gonna watch the highlight videos on YouTube where it's like, here's everything wrong with The Walking Dead, and I'm like, yeah, I know.
They lost me at the prison.
Yeah,
the prison. It was
no.
badly done that I was like.
No.
No.
So I mean, I hung in there.
Yeah.
We talked about Carol and Daryl when we did TV Friendships. I mean, there was a lot that I liked about it, but at that moment, the glimmer of hope I had for the future, which was getting to see Carl become the super. If you do not read the Walking Dead comic books, Carl becomes far and away the best character in those books. And once they extinguish that flame of hope of getting to see the badass that is a grown man, Carl, I was done.
Yeah. Well, this is a solid.
Yeah.
This is a solid mountain, I think.
All right. So the number ones were 2 votes for Firefly, Newsroom, and Walking Dead. So the final mountain is set, as there are 4 that have multiple votes. Our final mountain, all with 2 votes, is Sherlock, Breaking Bad, Modern Family, and Firefly.
Ooh, 3 out of 4.
Yeah, me too.
3 out of 4.
I got one, mama.
So that is our final mountain. Sherlock, Breaking Bad, Modern Family, and Firefly, all with 2 votes. So thank you so much for listening. Mike, you got anything going on you need to tell everybody about?
Oh, go if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, go check out the Floor's Dungeon at Dungeon Floor on Twitter, where it's a history inspired one shot and it's just goofy characters and stuff. I'm on that. And then also check out if you're ever going to watch the MCU, check out Mike Contextualizes the Universe. It's like an anthology of me and my friend who had never seen it, and I guided him through like giving context to when the movies were released, what was going on in our lives. It was like the time period when everything was going through, and we went through all of the 23 movies of the MCU, plus we're going to be going through other stuff. So check out at Contextualizes on Twitter, and all the links and stuff are there, or you can follow me here.
All right. Missy?
I got nothing.
You got nothing? Follow Missy at Missy the Writer.
Yep.
That is her Instagram.
I post some memes.
She posts memes and
sometimes I write, but I haven't been inspired
tells
daily.
people to suck her dick, I think.
Sometimes, yeah.
All right. Jeff?
So I got a couple things. You can catch me Friday. It's going to be every other Friday. I think they're going to start doing it. Playing in a Star Wars RPG game where I'm a gunslinger. So I'm basically a Firefly character in Star Wars. I will be on Saturday. We're doing a one shot for my gaming podcast that's starting back up again. Crit _or _die. We're going to be doing a 2 or 3 hour one shot on Saturday afternoon. And then in 2 weeks, we are recording the first 2 episodes of the newest podcast to Geek Bro, Crimacopia. It's a true crime podcast.
Crimacopia. Oh, no, wait. That's the other one.
That's the other one.
And you also catch me on Kickflix, which we're recording. The next episode's coming out next week, I think, or this week. I don't remember.
There's a special Shang-Chi episode that Neri visited me in New York, and we were on a rooftop in New York talking about Shang-Chi, and you can go check that out on Kickflix on Facebook and YouTube.
And make sure you check out all of our other podcasts on the Geek Bro Network. Of course, we got What's Up, Bro. You can catch Missy and Mike over there with Neri. You can catch me and David, who's on Geekmore sometimes, at Shiver. We will be doing. We recently did Candyman and released that one. We're going to be doing Crimson Peak tomorrow. We're going to be doing a live recording of our deep dive into Crimson Peak. We've got our others like A Dose of Ellie. Kickflix, our martial arts movie podcast. Seasons, a TV podcast. Kickflix. Sorry. as we punch.
That's our stick.
Yeah, sorry. Kickflix. So make sure you can head to geekbro.net where you can find a list of all of those podcasts. You can check us out. We'll be back as we've got a new group chat with all of the people involved in Geekmore, so we can try to be a little bit more routine. Everybody's schedules are getting a little crazy, but we're going to try to stick with doing Mondays. If you are listening on this, make sure you follow all of our social media at Mt.Geekmore. If you're following on there, Facebook, Instagram, all of that, you'll know what episode is coming up. We do have is that Cash App or PayPal?
That's Cash App.
That is Cash App. We've got a Cash App. It's Mt.Geekmore, just like all the rest of our stuff, where if you would like to donate, feel free. And I believe that's everything. So thank you all so much for listening. And that's how lists are made.
Bam, 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 ending the broad.